They did not laugh like friends. They laughed like winners. The briefing hall of the warship Vraction was wide, cold, and built from dark metal. Blue lights moved slowly across the ceiling like silent waves. Around the long table sat officers from many worlds. Some were tall and thin with sharp faces. Some were wide and armored like walking tanks. Some had hard skin and eyes that never blinked. They all looked strong in a way space species respected. At the far end of the table, higher than all of them, sat Captain Vardran. His body was huge, and his presence felt heavy, like the room had less air when he spoke. His command chair was not normal. It was a gravity chair, locked to the floor with a low-gravity system for combat safety. No one moved it. No one touched it. Not because it was forbidden, but because it was impossible. And everyone in the room knew it. Near the door stood the newest crew member, a human. His name was Ethan Cole. He wore a simple uniform with no armor plates. No claws, no fangs, no thick metal tail. He looked like a normal man from Earth. Average height, average build, calm face, quiet eyes. To the alien officers, he looked soft, weak, like a creature made for comfort, not for war. An officer with a long neck leaned forward and smiled. "Captain," he said, his voice full of pride, "Earth sent us this?" Another officer laughed. "A human? Really?" A third one made a low sound of amusement. The laughter spread around the table. It was not friendly. It was the kind of laughter that said, "We are better than you." Ethan stood still and said nothing. He did not smile. He did not argue. He simply watched and listened. He had been mocked before. On Earth, people laughed too, but they laughed because they did not know the truth. Captain Roke raised one heavy hand, and the room slowly became quiet. The captain's voice filled the hall like distant thunder. "Human," he said, "step forward." Ethan walked toward the table. His boots made soft sounds on the metal floor. The officers watched him the way predators watched a small animal that had wandered into the wrong place. Ethan stopped near the center of the room. He stood straight, shoulders relaxed, hands at his sides. The captain looked down at him with cold eyes. "You come from Earth," Captain Roke said. "A planet with strong gravity." "Yes, Captain," Ethan replied. His voice was calm and simple. There was no fear in it. A small silence followed. Then an officer on the left spoke again, unable to hold back. "Strong gravity means nothing," the officer said. "Humans still look weak." Ethan's eyes moved toward him for a moment, then back to the captain. The officer continued, enjoying the attention. "We have seen your kind," he said. "Soft skin, no armor, no natural weapons. Your muscles are small. Your bodies are thin." A few officers nodded. One of them tapped the table with a claw, like a judge waiting for a guilty answer. Another officer added, "If Earth is so harsh, why do your soldiers look like workers? Why do they not look like warriors?" That line made the room laugh again. Even the guards near the walls showed small smiles. Ethan did not react. He had learned a long time ago that anger only gave bullies what they wanted. The captain raised his hand again. The laughter stopped. Captain Roke leaned forward in his gravity chair. The metal under him made a deep, low sound. "Enough," he said. His voice cut through the room and left silence behind it. He stared at Ethan as if measuring him. "Human," he said slowly, "you will show this crew what your world has taught you." Ethan nodded once. The captain's eyes narrowed. "You will lift something," Captain Roke said. The officers smiled. They liked this. They wanted a show. They wanted proof that humans were not made for battle. Ethan asked one question, not rude, not proud, just direct. "What do you want me to lift, Captain?" The captain paused. He looked at the floor for a moment, then looked back at Ethan. "My chair," he said. The room froze. The smiles vanished. The laughter died. A strange quiet filled the hall, heavy and sharp. Everyone understood what the captain had just done. The captain's chair was locked with gravity systems. It weighed more than most cargo blocks. It was designed for a massive captain in full armor. It was not a test made to be fair. It was a test made to crush the human in front of everyone. One officer whispered, "He will fail." Another whispered back, "He might break his arms." A third officer said softly, "This will teach Earth its place." Ethan looked at the chair. Then he looked at the captain. His face did not change. He did not beg. He did not argue. He simply said, "Yes, Captain." That answer surprised some of them. A few officers expected excuses. They expected fear. But the human sounded like he had been given a normal task. Ethan walked toward the front. He stopped beside the captain's chair. Up close, the captain looked even larger. His armor was thick, layered, and heavy. His hands rested on the chair arms like stone. The gravity chair hummed quietly, a deep vibration that could be felt through the floor. Ethan placed one hand on the side of the chair frame. He felt the strength of the lock. It was strong, very strong. The officers leaned forward. They wanted to see him struggle. They wanted to see his face twist with pain. They wanted to see him fall. Ethan did not rush. He studied the chair like a worker studying a heavy machine. Then he bent his knees and lowered his body. He placed both hands under the chair frame, finding a grip. The captain watched closely, and for the first time, the captain noticed something that did not match the jokes. Ethan's arms were not soft. They were not huge, but they were tight, controlled, and steady, like steel hidden under cloth. Ethan took one normal breath. Not dramatic, not loud, just a calm breath. Then he looked up at the captain and spoke clearly. "Captain," he said, "do you want me to lift the chair? Or lift you too?" The room went silent again. That was not an insult. It was not a joke. It was a real question. A few officers stared at Ethan as if they had misheard him. No one spoke to Captain Roque like that. The captain's eyes widened slightly, not in anger, but in surprise. He did not answer. He only stared. Ethan nodded once, as if the answer did not matter. He looked down again and tightened his grip. The officers held their breath. Ethan began to lift. At first, nothing moved. The gravity lock held strong. A few officers smiled again, ready to laugh. Then a small sound came from the floor. A heavy metal click. The chair moved. Not much, just 1 inch. But it moved. The room's lights flickered. A low warning tone started somewhere in the ship. The officers stopped smiling. Ethan lifted again. The chair rose another inch. The captain's armor shifted slightly as the chair tilted. The captain's hands tightened on the chair arms. A red warning light blinked above the door. The ship's system voice spoke in a cold, calm tone. Gravity lock failure. Command seat movement detected. The hall became perfectly still. No one laughed now. No one breathed loudly. They watched, frozen, as the impossible happened in front of them. Ethan did not look excited. He did not look proud. He looked focused, calm, like this was only hard work, nothing more. The captain's chair rose higher. The captain rose with it. The officers looked at each other with fear starting behind their eyes. Because this was not a human failing. This was a human trying. And if he was only trying, then what would happen when he stopped holding back? Ethan lifted again, and the chair rose higher, the gravity system screaming warnings. Captain Roque stared down at the human, and for the first time, the captain did not look like a king watching a joke. He looked like a commander watching a weapon. And in that moment, every alien in the room understood a truth they had refused to accept. Humans were not weak. They were built for a world that fought them every day. Earth did not make gentle creatures. Earth made survivors. The alarm did not stop. It grew louder, sharper, and more urgent. Red lights blinked across the walls of the briefing hall. The gravity chair was no longer resting on the floor. It was floating just a little, held in the air by the strength of one human. Ethan's arms were tight, his hands locked under the chair frame, his back straight, his legs bent in a strong stance. He was not shaking. He was not screaming. He was simply lifting. The officers around the table did not move. They stared as if their eyes could not accept what they were seeing. A few of them looked at the captain, waiting for him to shout, to stop it, to punish the human. But Captain Roque Vardrand did not speak. His eyes stayed on Ethan, cold and wide. The chair vibrated with the force of the gravity lock, trying to pull it back down. The sound was like a deep growl coming from the floor. Ethan lifted a little higher. The chair rose another inch. The captain's armor shifted again, and the heavy plates made a low clink. The officers finally reacted. One of them stood up quickly and shouted, "Stop! You will damage the command system." Another officer hissed, "He is breaking protocol." A third one stepped back, fear mixing with anger. Ethan did not look at them. He only looked forward, breathing slowly through his nose. The ship's system voice spoke again, calm and cold. Warning. Gravity anchor unstable. Command seat safety engaged. Captain Roke raised one hand. The officers fell silent at once. The captain's voice came out low. Lower the chair, he ordered. Ethan nodded. Carefully, he lowered it back down. The moment the chair touched the floor, the gravity lock snapped back into place with a hard metallic thud. The warning alarm stopped. The red lights faded. The hall returned to its normal blue glow. For a few seconds, no one spoke. The silence was thick. It felt like the room itself was holding its breath. Ethan stood up straight and stepped back from the chair. He did not smile. He did not act proud. He simply waited, hands relaxed at his sides, like a worker who had finished a task. Captain Roke stared at him for a long moment. Then he leaned back in his chair. Human, he said, what is your training? Ethan answered simply. Strength training, Captain. A few officers made confused sounds. One of them blinked slowly. Training, he repeated, like the word itself was strange. Another officer leaned forward, trying to sound confident again. This is a trick, he said. Some human device. Hidden tools. You cannot lift a gravity-locked chair. Ethan looked at him for the first time. His eyes were calm. No device, he said. No tools. The officer's face tightened. Then explain it, he demanded. Ethan did not speak like a teacher. He spoke like a man explaining a simple fact. On Earth, he said, gravity is strong. We grow under weight. We carry weight. We work under weight. Some of us train for it on purpose. The officers exchanged looks. They did not like the sound of that. In their minds, strength came from genetics, armor, and technology. Not from pain. Not from repetition. Not from choice. Captain Roke's eyes narrowed again. You say your species becomes stronger by lifting heavy objects, he said. Yes, Captain, Ethan replied. And by lifting them again, he added and again. The room stayed quiet. The officer who had laughed the loudest earlier tried to recover his pride. Then lift something else, he said. Lift a cargo block. Lift a weapon crate. Do it in the trial bay. Other officers nodded. They wanted more proof. They wanted to find a limit. They wanted to see the human finally fail. Captain Roke turned his head slightly. Trial bay, he said. A door on the far wall opened with a hiss. Two guards stepped forward. Their armor was thick and sharp. Their hands rested on their weapons. Ethan walked between them without protest. As he passed the table, he heard low whispers. Some voices sounded angry. Some sounded afraid. One officer said, "This is dangerous." Another whispered, "Humans should not exist." Ethan did not react. He kept walking. The corridor outside was long and narrow. The metal walls carried the echo of footsteps. The guards did not speak to him. Their eyes stayed forward. But Ethan could feel their tension. They were not escorting a weak crew member. They were escorting something unknown, something that did not fit the rules of their world. The trial bay was a large room used for testing equipment. It had thick floors, strong walls, and heavy cranes on the ceiling. The air smelled like oil and metal. Cargo blocks were stacked in the corners. Training tools were placed along one wall. In the center of the room was a massive crate made of reinforced alloy. It was as wide as a small vehicle. A display panel beside it showed its weight in alien numbers. Ethan could not read the exact value, but he could tell it was heavy, very heavy. The officers entered behind him, forming a half circle. Captain Roke came last, still in his armor, still silent. He stopped near the front and looked at Ethan. "Lift it," the captain said. Ethan stepped toward the crate. He placed his hands on the metal surface. It was cold. He tested it gently, feeling the balance. He moved around it once, like a professional. Then he positioned himself, feet apart, knees bent, back straight. Some officers laughed quietly again, trying to bring back their confidence. "He will fail," one said. "He is only a soft human," another replied. Ethan took a breath and lifted. The crate did not move. The officer smiled. Ethan adjusted his grip. He lowered his hips slightly. Then he lifted again. The crate rose. Slowly at first, then higher. The officers stopped smiling. Ethan lifted until the crate was fully off the ground. He held it for a second. Then he sat down gently. The room was silent. A few officers stared with open mouths. One of them whispered, "That is impossible." Ethan looked at them. "It is heavy," he said, "but it is not impossible." Captain Roke stepped forward. "Again," he said. Ethan nodded. He lifted the crate again, this time faster. He carried it 2 steps and placed it down. The officers backed away slightly, like the human had become a wild animal. The captain's eyes stayed fixed on Ethan. "You did not strain," the captain said. "You did not show fear." Ethan wiped a small bit of sweat from his forehead. "I trained for years," he said. "This is not new for me." An officer suddenly spoke in a sharp voice. "Your muscles are small," he said. "How can you be this strong?" Ethan looked at him and answered with simple honesty. "Strength is not only size," he said. "It is control. It is bone. It is practice. It is pain." The word pain made the officers uncomfortable. They did not like it. In their culture, pain meant damage. It meant failure. On Earth, pain can mean growth. Captain Roke turned slightly and looked at his officers. "Humans live under high gravity," he said. "Their bodies are built for resistance." The officers did not reply. They could not. Their old jokes felt weak now. Then, suddenly, one of the wall panels beeped. A technician's voice came through the speaker. "Captain," the voice said, "we have a system report. The gravity chair lock shows stress marks." The captain's eyes narrowed. He looked at Ethan again. "You did that," he said. Ethan nodded. "Yes," he said. "I lifted it." The captain's jaw tightened. For a moment, the room felt dangerous. The officers waited for punishment. But Captain Roke did not shout. He did not attack. Instead, he stepped closer to Ethan and spoke quietly, so only the nearest officers could hear. "Human," he said, "your strength is not normal. It is a weapon." Ethan met his gaze. "On Earth," Ethan replied, "we are taught to respect weapons." The captain stared at him for a long moment. Then he turned away. "This test is not finished," he said. He looked at the officers. "Prepare the next trial." The officers nodded, but their faces were pale. Ethan stood still, calm and silent, while the aliens began to understand the truth. They had laughed at Earth's weak muscles. But now they were not laughing. Now they were afraid of what Earth had created. The next trial did not begin with laughter. It began with distance. The officers stood farther from Ethan now, as if space could protect them. In the trial bay, the heavy crate sat where Ethan had placed it, like proof carved into metal. The room still smelled of oil and cold alloy, but something else had changed. The air felt tense. Even the guards looked different. Their hands stayed near their weapons, but not in a proud way. In a careful way. Captain Roke Vardran watched Ethan without speaking. His face was hard, but his eyes were active, like he was studying a new kind of danger. One officer finally broke the silence. He was the same one who had mocked the loudest in the briefing hall. His pride was wounded, and he needed to fix it. "This is still not real strength," he said. "This is only lifting." Another officer nodded quickly, happy to follow the first voice. "Yes," he said. "It is simple force. Even machines can do it." Ethan did not answer. He did not need to. The crate was already the answer. The captain spoke instead. "Machines can lift," Captain Roke said. "But machines do not bleed. Machines do not feel fear." The officers became quiet again. Captain Roke took a slow step forward. The metal floor made a deep sound under his armored boots. He stopped a few steps away from Ethan. "Human," he said, "why do you train this way?" Ethan looked at him. His face stayed calm, but his eyes showed something deeper. Not anger, not pride, just memory. "Because on Earth," Ethan said, "we have to." The officers did not understand. One of them tilted his head. "You have technology," he said. "You have cities. You have medicine. You have weapons. Why would you still train your body like an animal?" Ethan's mouth tightened slightly. "Because our world does not care," he replied. "Earth does not care if you are smart. Earth does not care if you are kind. Earth will still crush you if you are weak." The officers stared at him. They were used to planets that were built for comfort. Planets with light gravity. Planets with soft climates. Planets where survival was not a daily fight. Ethan's words sounded harsh, almost wrong. Captain Roke's voice became quieter. "Explain," he said. Ethan nodded. He looked around the trial bay at the thick floors and heavy machines. Earth's gravity is strong, he said. It pulls on you every second. When you stand up, you fight it. When you run, you fight it. When you carry something, you fight it. He tapped his chest lightly. Your body learns. It adapts. It becomes stronger. One officer crossed his arms. But your body still looks small, he said. You're not like Captain Roke. You do not look like a war species. Ethan looked at the officer and answered simply. Looks do not matter, he said. Function matters. The officer opened his mouth to argue again, but Captain Roke raised his hand. Enough, the captain said. Then he turned to Ethan. You lifted my chair, he said. You lifted the cargo crate. That proves strength. Ethan waited. The captain continued. But strength alone is not what wins wars, Captain Roke said. Control wins wars. Discipline wins wars. Fear management wins wars. Ethan nodded slowly. Yes, Captain, he said. Captain Roke stared at him for a long moment. Show me control, the captain said. One of the officers looked confused. Captain, he said, what does he mean? Captain Roke did not answer the officer. He pressed a button on his wrist console. The trial bay lights dimmed slightly. A low hum spread through the floor. Ethan felt it immediately. It was the gravity system. The same kind of system that locked the captain's chair. But this time, it was aimed at the whole room. A screen on the wall lit up. Numbers and symbols flashed. Ethan could not read them, but he understood the feeling in his bones. The gravity was rising. Slowly. The officers did not notice at first. Their bodies were built for lighter gravity, and they were used to moving easily. But then their shoulders began to sink. Their breaths became heavier. One officer grabbed the table edge for balance. Captain, he said confused, what is this? Captain Roke's voice was cold. A controlled environment, he replied. A test. The gravity increased again. The guards near the door shifted their feet. Their armor became heavier. One guard's knee bent slightly, as if the floor had pulled him down. Ethan felt it too. His muscles tightened. His joints felt pressure. But his stance stayed solid. His breathing stayed steady. He did not panic. He simply adjusted. Captain Roke watched him closely. You humans train under Earth gravity, the captain said. But can you still function under higher gravity? Ethan did not speak. He took a slow step forward. His boots hit the floor with more weight now. The gravity rose again. The officers started to struggle. One of them dropped to one knee, trying to hide it. Another officer's hands trembled as he held onto a railing. Their pride was cracking in real time. Ethan stayed upright. He felt the pull, but he did not fall. He did not even look surprised. Captain Roke's eyes narrowed. How, he asked. Ethan answered with a simple truth. Because I trained, he said, and because I lived. The gravity rose again. Now it was serious. The air felt thicker. Ethan's chest worked harder. Sweat began to form at his hairline. His muscles burned, but his eyes stayed focused. One officer finally snapped. Stop this, he shouted. This is madness. Captain Roke did not stop. Madness, the captain repeated, is thinking humans are weak. Another officer tried to stand tall and failed. He fell back into a chair with a heavy crash. The guards near the door were now breathing hard. Their armor looked like a prison around them. Ethan took another step, then another. Each step was heavy but controlled. He walked toward the large crate again. The officers watched him in fear. No, one whispered. He will not lift it under this gravity. Ethan placed his hands on the crate. The gravity hummed louder. The system voice spoke softly from the wall speaker. Gravity level increased. Ethan bent his knees. His back stayed straight. He took one breath. Then he lifted. The crate rose a few inches. The officer's eyes widened. Ethan's arm shook slightly this time, but he did not drop it. He held it. Then he set it down carefully. The officers were silent. They had no words left. Captain Roke stared at Ethan with a new expression. Not humor. Not cruelty. Something closer to respect. You feel pain, the captain said. Yet you continue. Ethan nodded. Pain is part of it, he said. On Earth, pain is a teacher. The officers looked sick. The idea was foreign to them. They saw pain as a warning to stop. Humans saw pain as a sign that the body was changing. Captain Roke stepped closer. This is not only muscle, he said. This is mind. Ethan did not deny it. Yes, he replied. The captain turned toward the officers. You mocked him, he said. You laughed. No one answered. The captain's voice grew sharper. You assumed weakness because of appearance, he said. You assumed safety because of softness. The officers lowered their eyes. The gravity slowly returned to normal. The pressure lifted from the room. Several officers straightened up, embarrassed. The guards took deeper breaths. Ethan rolled his shoulders slightly, relaxing. Captain Roke looked at Ethan again. This ship fights soon, the captain said. Raiders have been seen in this sector. Ethan's eyes sharpened. Yes, Captain, he said. Captain Roke paused. If we are boarded, the captain said, your strength will matter. Ethan nodded. I will defend the ship, he said. The officers did not laugh at that promise. They did not smile. They believed him now, and that belief scared them. Then a sharp beep came from the captain's wrist console. He looked down at it. His face changed. He turned to the officers. We have a problem, he said. Someone accessed the gravity controls without my command. The room went still. Ethan looked at the captain. Sabotage? Ethan asked. Captain Roke's eyes hardened. Yes, he said. The officers looked at each other in fear. Because now it was not just a test. Now it was real. Someone on the ship was trying to create an accident. And Ethan, the human they had mocked, was standing in the middle of it. The captain's voice dropped low. Human, he said, stay close. Ethan nodded once. His calm face did not change, but his eyes did. They became sharp, focused, and dangerous. The trial was over. Now the real game had begun. The trial bay felt different after the sabotage warning. A moment ago, the officers had been focused on pride, fear, and shock. Now they were focused on survival. Captain Roke Vardran stood still for a second, listening to the ship's systems through his wrist console. His face stayed hard, but his eyes moved with speed. He was not surprised that someone had touched the gravity controls. He looked like a commander who had expected betrayal one day. Ethan stood a few steps away, calm but alert. He did not look confused. He did not ask too many questions. He only waited for orders. That alone made the captain notice him even more. Many species panicked under sudden danger. Humans, at least this human, became quieter. Captain Roke turned to his officers. No one leaves this bay, he said. Guards, lock the doors. The guards moved fast. The heavy doors slid shut with a deep hiss. A security light turned from blue to red. The officers looked uncomfortable. They did not like being trapped in a room with a human and a captain who was angry. One officer stepped forward, trying to sound brave. Captain, he said, why would anyone sabotage the gravity controls? Captain Roke's voice was cold. Because fear makes fools, he replied. And fools make mistakes. He looked at Ethan. Human, he said, you felt the gravity change first. What? Ethan answered simply. Because my body knows weight, he said. The captain nodded slightly. He turned back to the officers. Someone increased gravity without my command, he said. If the system had spiked higher, it could have crushed half this room. A few officers swallowed hard. They finally understood how close they had been to disaster. One officer's eyes flicked toward Ethan, then away again. The same officer who had mocked the loudest earlier. His face looked pale. Captain Roke stepped toward the wall console and opened the system logs. Lines of data ran down the screen. The captain read them quickly. Then he stopped. His jaw tightened. The access came from inside this bay, he said. The officers froze. Ethan's eyes moved slowly across the group. He did not accuse anyone, but he remembered faces. He remembered voices. Captain Roke turned sharply. Who touched the console? He demanded. No one answered. The silence was heavy. Then an officer with narrow eyes spoke carefully. Captain, he said, this is a mistake. The system must have glitched. Captain Roke's gaze snapped to him. The system does not glitch, the captain said. Not in a warship. The officer stepped back. Ethan noticed something small. The officer's right hand was trembling, but he was trying to hide it. Ethan said nothing. Captain Roke looked at the guards. Search them, he ordered. The guards moved forward, checking the officers one by one. The officers protested, but softly. They did not want to anger the captain. Ethan stood still, watching. He was not enjoying this, but he understood it. On Earth, in dangerous jobs, one mistake could kill everyone. The search reached the narrow-eyed officer. One guard grabbed his arm. The officer suddenly jerked away. In the same moment, he pulled a small device from his sleeve. It was thin, sharp, and glowing. A signal spike hit the wall console. The gravity hum in the floor changed again. Fast. Too fast. The officer shouted, "You will not keep the human," and slammed the device into the console. The lights flickered. The gravity surged. The officers cried out. Several fell to their knees. The guards stumbled. Even Captain Rocha's armor shifted as the weight increased. Ethan felt the pressure hit him like a giant hand. His knees bent. His muscles tightened. His spine compressed. The air seemed heavier. The floor felt like it was trying to pull him through metal. But Ethan did not fall. He clenched his jaw and forced himself to stay upright. Captain Rocha roared, "Stop!" The sabotage officer laughed once, sharp and desperate. "Humans are a threat," he shouted. "They will replace us. They will break our ranks." His voice sounded like fear more than hate. The gravity surged again. The system voice screamed warnings. Danger. Gravity overload. Structural stress. The room shook slightly. A few officers collapsed fully. The guards were on one knee, struggling to move. Captain Rocha tried to reach the console, but his heavy armor made each step slow. Ethan moved first. He stepped forward through the crushing weight. His boots slammed into the floor like hammers. Every step was pain. His muscles burned. His lungs fought for air, but he kept moving. The sabotage officer stared at him, shocked. "No," he whispered. "You should be down." Ethan did not speak. He reached the officer. The officer tried to pull a weapon. Ethan grabbed his wrist. The officer's bones were thinner than a human's. Ethan twisted once. The weapon fell. Ethan pushed the officer down to the floor. Under the high gravity, the officer hit the metal hard and could not rise. Ethan moved past him toward the console. Captain Rocha shouted again, "Human, stop! The console is live." Ethan ignored the warning. He grabbed the device the officer had placed. It was burning hot. The gravity hummed like an angry engine. Ethan's fingers tightened. He ripped the device out. Sparks flew. The lights flashed. The gravity dropped slightly, then surged again. Ethan slammed his palm onto the console screen. The panel cracked. He did not care. He pressed buttons, trying to shut the system down. He did not know the alien language, but he understood patterns. Emergency symbols. Warning icons. He hit the largest red symbol he could find. The system voice changed. Emergency override requested. Ethan hit again. Emergency override requested. Ethan hit it a third time. The gravity suddenly dropped. Not to normal, but enough. The officers gasped. The guards rose slowly. Captain Rocha took a heavy step forward. The sabotage officer lay on the floor, breathing hard, trapped by his own crime. The captain walked to him and lifted him by the collar with one hand. "Who are you?" Captain Rocha demanded. The officer's eyes were wild. "I am loyal," he hissed. "Loyal to our kind. Humans are monsters. Their strength is not natural." Captain Rocha's voice was cold. "Your fear made you a traitor," he said. He threw the officer to the floor again. Then he turned to Ethan. For the first time, the captain's face showed something close to respect. "You moved under overload gravity," Captain Rocha said. "You disabled the sabotage." Ethan's breathing was heavy now. Sweat ran down his forehead, but his voice stayed steady. "I did what I had to do," he said. The captain stared at him. "Most of my crew could not move," he said. Ethan nodded. "Your bodies are not built for it," Ethan replied. That was not an insult. It was a fact. Captain Rocha looked at the officers who had mocked Ethan earlier. Some of them could not meet his eyes. Their pride was broken. Their laughter was gone. Captain Rocha turned back to Ethan. "Human," he said, "you are not only strong, you are stable under pressure." Ethan said nothing. He only stood straight again. The captain looked toward the door. "Take the traitor to security," he ordered. The guard dragged the sabotage officer away. As the doors opened, the hallway lights flashed. A siren echoed from far down the ship. Captain Rocha's wrist console beeped again. He read the message, and his expression changed fast. "Captain," one officer asked, voice shaking. Captain Roke looked up. "We have incoming," he said. "Unknown ship. Fast approach." The officers stiffened. Ethan's eyes narrowed. "Raiders?" Ethan asked. Captain Roke nodded once. "Most likely," he said. The captain turned to the officers. "Battle stations," he commanded. "Now." The officers moved, but their steps were not confident. They were scared. They had just seen sabotage from within, and now a threat from outside. Captain Roke looked at Ethan again. "Human," he said, "you stay with me." Ethan nodded. "Yes, Captain." As they left the trial bay, Ethan glanced back once at the heavy crate and the cracked console. The tests were finished. The ship did not need more proof. The ship needed protection, and Ethan could feel it in his bones. The next time he lifted something heavy, it would not be a chair or a crate. It would be the weight of the whole crew's survival. The warship Vraction changed its mood in seconds. The calm blue lights in the corridors turned into flashing red strips. A sharp alarm echoed through the metal halls. Doors sealed in different sections. Heavy locks clicked into place. Overhead speakers repeated the same message in a cold voice. "Alert! Unknown vessel approaching. Combat readiness required." Crew members ran past each other, moving fast but not smooth. Many of them had never faced a real boarding threat. They were trained for ship systems, not for close combat. Ethan walked beside Captain Roke Vardran, matching his pace. The captain's armor was heavy, and each step sounded like a drum. Ethan's boots were quieter, but his body was ready. His mind was clear. Captain Roke checked his wrist console again. "The unknown ship is not answering," he said. His voice was controlled but tight. "Its speed is high. Its path is direct." Ethan did not ask for details. He already understood. Raiders did not send polite greetings. Raiders came to take. They reached the command bridge. The doors opened with a hiss. Inside, officers sat at stations, hands moving over controls. A large screen showed the dark space outside. A small ship, sharp and fast, was closing in. It looked like a blade. Captain Roke walked to the center. "Status," he ordered. A navigation officer answered quickly. "Distance closing, Captain. They will be in docking range in 2 minutes." A weapons officer added, "Our cannons are ready, but they're staying close to our blind angle." Captain Roke's eyes narrowed. "They know our ship," he said. "They have studied us." Ethan stood near the captain, silent. Several bridge officers glanced at him. Some looked relieved. Some looked nervous. One of them whispered, "A human on the bridge during combat." Captain Roke ignored the whispers. He spoke again. "Raise shields," he ordered. "Seal all inner doors. Move security teams to docking points." The officers obeyed. But Ethan noticed the small signs of fear. Hands shaking, breathing fast, eyes moving too quickly. These aliens were strong in armor, but many of them had never fought in tight hallways. Ethan understood close fights. He had trained for them. Captain Roke looked at Ethan. "Human," he said, "you will stay with me. If boarders enter, you will act." Ethan nodded. "Yes, Captain," he replied. The captain's voice became lower. "If we lose the bridge, we lose the ship," he said. Ethan answered simply, "Then we will not lose it." The unknown ship reached docking range. It did not fire. It did not circle. It moved straight to the side of the Vraction like a parasite. A loud metallic sound hit the hull. The ship shook. The bridge lights flickered. The docking alarm screamed. "Unauthorized connection detected," the system voice announced. "Hull breach risk." Captain Roke slammed his fist on the command rail. "They are attaching," he growled. The weapons officer shouted, "Captain, they are using magnetic clamps. If we fire, we may damage our own hull." Captain Roke's jaw tightened. He made a quick decision. "Do not fire," he ordered. "Prepare for boarding." Ethan's eyes stayed on the screen. He could almost feel the raiders on the other side of the metal, cutting through, preparing to enter. The captain turned to a security officer. "How many guard at the docking point?" The officer answered, "8, Captain." Captain Roke's face hardened. "8 is not enough," he said. Ethan spoke for the first time in the bridge. "Where will they enter?" he asked. The captain looked at him. "Docking ring 3, he said. Ethan nodded. "Then we should meet them there," Ethan replied. Several officers looked shocked. One of them blurted, "That is suicide." Ethan looked at him calmly. If we wait, they spread, he said. If we meet them, we control. Captain Roke stared at Ethan for a second. Then he nodded once. Agreed, the captain said. Human, you will lead the defense at docking ring 3. The bridge became quiet. Ethan was not an officer of their species. He was new. He had no rank here. But the captain had spoken. That was enough. Ethan did not celebrate. He only nodded. Understood, he said. Captain Roke pointed at 2 guards. You too, with the human, he ordered, and send 4 more. Ethan turned and left the bridge. The guards followed him. In the corridors, the alarm still screamed. Ethan ran, but not in panic. His movements were controlled. He could feel his heart beating faster, but his breathing stayed steady. This was the moment. Not a test. Not a joke. Not a chair. Real danger. They reached docking ring 3. It was a wide circular hall with thick walls. A heavy door at the far end led to the docking tunnel. Security teams stood behind cover, weapons ready. Most of them looked tense. One guard whispered, "They will slaughter us." Another guard said, "Our armor is heavy. We cannot move fast." Ethan stepped forward. "Listen," he said, voice clear. The guards looked at him. Some did not like taking orders from a human, but fear made them listen. "Do not spread out," Ethan said. "Stay in 2 lines. First line fires. Second line reloads and covers. If they push, we fall back together. No one runs alone." The guards blinked. They were not used to such simple battle words, but made sense. Captain Roke arrived a moment later, his armor loud in the hall. He stood behind Ethan. "You heard the human," the captain said. "Do it." The guards moved into position. The docking door began to shake. A bright line of heat appeared at the edges. Raiders were cutting through. The metal glowed. Sparks fell like rain. Ethan crouched behind cover, watching the door. His hands were empty. The guards had weapons, but Ethan had not been given one. Captain Roke noticed. "You have no weapon," the captain said. Ethan glanced at him. "I'm the weapon," Ethan replied. The captain did not smile, but his eyes showed something like approval. The door exploded inward. Smoke and hot air rushed into the hall. Dark figures poured through the opening. Raiders in light armor, moving fast. Their helmets had sharp designs. Their weapons were short and deadly. They fired immediately. Blue energy bolts hit the walls. Sparks flew. The guards fired back. The hall filled with noise. Ethan moved. He did not charge blindly. He waited for the first raider to step into the open. Then he sprinted. Under ship gravity, his speed was shocking. He reached the raider before the raider could aim again. Ethan grabbed the raider's weapon and shoved it aside. Then he struck. One punch to the helmet. The raider dropped. Ethan took the weapon from the raider's hands. Now he was armed. Another raider rushed him with a blade. Ethan stepped sideways, grabbed the raider's arm, and twisted. The raider screamed. Ethan slammed him into the wall. The raider fell and did not rise. The guards watched in disbelief. Humans moved differently. Not heavy like tanks. Not slow like armor. Humans moved like controlled storms. The raiders realized it too. They started firing at Ethan. Ethan rolled behind cover, then moved again. He used the walls. He used angles. He stayed close, where their long aim did not help them. Captain Roke fired from behind, his shots powerful and precise. The guards followed Ethan's plan. 2 lines. Cover. Fall back together. The raiders pushed harder. More of them entered. The hall became crowded. Ethan could feel the pressure building. Then something changed. A loud boom echoed behind the raiders. Another door opened. Raiders had breached a second entry point. They were trying to surround the defenders. A guard shouted, "Captain, they are flanking us." Captain Roke turned sharply. His eyes widened. Ethan saw it too. If the raiders reached the side corridor, they could cut the team in half. Ethan made a fast decision. "Hold the front," he shouted. "I will stop the flank." Before anyone could argue, Ethan sprinted toward the side corridor. The raiders were moving fast, expecting easy kills. They did not expect a human. Ethan met the first one and drove him back with a hard, then grabbed his armor and threw him to the floor. Under the ship's gravity, the raider hit like a rock. Ethan pushed forward, fighting in tight space. His muscles burned, but he did not slow. He felt a sharp pain on his side. A blade had cut him. Warm blood soaked his uniform. Ethan ignored it. He grabbed the raider who cut him and slammed him into the wall twice. The raider fell. Ethan's breathing became heavier. He was still strong, but he was not made of metal. He was flesh. He could bleed. The raider saw the blood and grew confident. One of them shouted, "He is mortal!" They rushed him together. Ethan backed up one step. Then he planted his feet. He used a corridor like a funnel. He struck the first raider, then the second. He grabbed the third and used him as a shield. Energy bolts hit the raider's armor instead of Ethan. Ethan pushed forward again. The corridor became quiet for a moment. Raiders lay on the floor. Ethan stood among them, breathing hard, blood on his side, eyes sharp. He had stopped the flank, but he could hear more boots coming. More raiders. The fight was not over. And somewhere far behind him, on the bridge, the captain's life support warning suddenly beeped. Captain Roca's suit had taken a hit. The ship's strongest commander was now in danger, and Ethan was the only one strong enough to carry him if the captain fell. Ethan heard the change before anyone told him. In the middle of the corridor, surrounded by fallen raiders, he caught a new sound under the alarms and gunfire. A sharp repeating beep. It was not a normal ship alarm. It was closer, more personal, like a warning from a suit. Ethan's eyes lifted toward the main hall. He could not see the bridge from here, but he could feel that something important had shifted. Then a guard's voice shouted over the comm line, broken by static. "Captain hit! Captain hit!" Ethan's chest tightened. Captain Rovardran was not just the leader. He was the anchor of the crew. If the captain fell, fear would spread faster than the raiders. Ethan did not hesitate. He turned and sprinted back toward docking ring 3. His side burned where the blade had cut him, and blood stuck to his uniform. But his legs still moved like engines. He reached the main hall just as the defenders were pushed back another step. Raiders were still coming through the docking door. The floor was littered with sparks, smoke, and bodies. The air smelled of burnt metal. Captain Roke stood near the center, firing with heavy precision. But his movements were slower now. His armor was damaged. A bright crack ran across his chest plate. A small stream of smoke escaped from his suit seam. The captain's shots were still deadly, but his breathing was heavier. Ethan saw the captain's left arm twitch. A guard shouted, "Captain, your suit." Captain Roke did not answer. He fired again, then stumbled. His knee hit the floor. For a second, the whole defense line froze. Even the guards stopped firing. It was like watching a mountain fall. Raiders noticed the moment too. One of them shouted something in their language and rushed forward, aiming at the captain's exposed side. Ethan moved. He crossed the distance fast and slammed into the raider. The raider flew backward, hitting the wall. Ethan grabbed the raider's weapon and threw it across the hall. Then he stood in front of the captain like a shield. Energy bolts hit the floor near his feet. Ethan did not flinch. He fired back with the weapon he had taken earlier. 2 raiders dropped. The guards regained their courage and fired again. The defense line stabilized for a moment. Ethan crouched beside Captain Roke. Up close, the captain looked worse. The captain's helmet display was flashing. A red light blinked on his chest. Ethan could hear a faint hiss, like air leaking. The captain's voice came out low and strained. "Human," he growled. "Do not let them take the bridge." Ethan nodded. "They won't," he said. The captain tried to stand. His armor made a heavy grinding sound. He rose halfway, then dropped again. The suit's weight was too much. The damage had weakened the support systems. A guard stepped forward. "Captain, we can carry you," he said. But the guard's arms shook just from standing in combat gear. Captain Roca's armor was built for a giant. No normal crew member could lift him in the middle of a fight. Ethan looked at the captain's suit. He understood the problem instantly. If the captain stayed here, he would die. If the captain was dragged slowly, the defenders would lose their line. Raiders would push through. Ethan made a decision. "Hold the door," he shouted to the guards. 2 lines. "Keep firing." Then he turned to Captain Roke. "Captain," Ethan said, "I'm moving you." The captain's eyes narrowed. "No," the captain said. "Fight." Ethan shook his head once. "If you die, we lose," Ethan replied. The captain tried to argue, but another energy bolt hit the floor beside them and exploded into sparks. Ethan did not wait. He slipped his arms under the captain's armored body. The captain was heavier than any human soldier Ethan had ever carried. The suit alone was like a machine. The captain's body inside, it was like stone. But Ethan's muscles tightened. His legs planted. His back stayed straight. He lifted. The captain rose off the floor. The guards stared. Even in the middle of battle, their minds stopped for a second. The human had lifted their captain. Fully. Not a chair. Not a crate. A living giant in full armor. Ethan held the captain against his chest like a heavy rescue carry. Captain Rocha's eyes widened. He was too proud to show fear, but shock slipped through. "Human," he said, voice low. Ethan did not answer. He started walking. Each step was heavy. His injured side screamed with pain. Blood warmed his uniform. His arms shook slightly under the weight. But he did not drop the captain. He moved with control. The guards fired harder, covering him. Captain Rocha's heavy weapon hung at his side. Ethan could not use it while carrying him. He had only one option: move fast and trust the team. Raiders noticed what was happening. Their leader shouted, and several raiders aimed at Ethan. Energy bolts struck the walls around him. One bolt hit Ethan's shoulder and burned through the fabric. Pain flashed. Ethan's body jerked, but he kept moving. A guard shouted, "Human down." Ethan was not down. He kept walking. He reached the inner corridor leading toward the medical bay. Captain Rocha's voice came out strained. "Put me down," he ordered. Ethan ignored it. "You're bleeding air," Ethan said. "Medical now." Captain Rocha tried to lift his head. "If they breach the bridge," he began. Ethan cut him off. "They won't," he said again. "Not while I'm alive." The captain fell silent. Ethan's words were not pride. They were a promise. Behind them, the battle continued. The sound of weapons echoed through the halls. Ethan could hear guards shouting. He could hear raiders screaming. The ship shook as if it was breathing through pain. Ethan pushed forward. The medical bay door was ahead. It opened as a medic drone detected the captain's suit. Inside, bright white lights washed over them. Medical staff turned in shock. They were not used to seeing the captain carried him like this. They were used to the captain walking in unbroken. Ethan laid the captain down carefully on a reinforced bed. The bed groaned under the weight. A medic rushed forward with tools. "Suit breach," the medic said. "Life support unstable." Captain Rocha tried to sit up. "No," Ethan said firmly, placing a hand on the captain's shoulder. The captain stared at him. Ethan's hand was covered in blood, partly his, partly from the captain's suit. The medic began sealing the suit. Foam filled the crack. The hissing slowed. The red light blinked less. The captain's breathing became steadier. Ethan stepped back. Only now did he feel the full pain in his side and shoulder. His body shook slightly. He pressed a hand to his cut. Blood soaked through his fingers. A medic saw him. "You are injured," the medic said. Ethan shook his head. "Later," he replied. The medic tried to grab him, but Ethan pulled away. He turned toward the door. The captain's voice stopped him. "Human," Captain Rocha said. Ethan looked back. The captain's eyes were sharp even through pain. "You lifted me," the captain said. Ethan nodded. "Yes," Ethan replied. Captain Rocha's jaw tightened. His pride struggled with reality. Then he spoke a sentence no one expected. "Thank you," the captain said. The words were heavy. They carried more weight than his armor. Ethan did not smile. He only nodded once. "Stay alive," Ethan said. Then he left the medical bay. He ran back toward the fight. His body hurt. His uniform was torn. His blood marked the floor behind him. But his eyes were calm again, because now the crew had seen the truth with their own eyes. They had mocked Earth's weak muscles. Now they were alive because of them, and the raiders were about to learn the same lesson. When Ethan reached the corridor near docking ring 3, he heard a new sound. Not raider boots. Not energy fire. A deeper metallic pounding. Something heavier was entering the ship. Something the guards were not ready for. Ethan slowed for the first time. He tightened his grip on the stolen weapon, and he whispered one simple word to himself. "Boss." The pounding grew louder with every step Ethan took. It was not the sound of normal boots. It was heavy, slow, and confident, like someone walking who did not fear the ship, the guards, or the alarms. Ethan moved carefully now, staying close to the wall. Smoke still drifted through the corridor. The air tasted like burned metal. The lights were red and flashing, making shadows jump across the floor. Ahead, near docking ring 3, the gunfire had changed. It was not a steady exchange anymore. It was broken, desperate, like the defenders were losing control. Ethan reached the corner and looked into the hall. His stomach tightened. The guards were still there, but their line was broken. Some were down. Some had fallen back, behind cover. Raiders had pushed deeper into the hall. And in the middle of it all stood the reason for the heavy footsteps. A raider in thick armor, taller than the others, wider. His suit was built like a walking wall. His helmet was shaped like a predator's skull. On his back was a heavy power pack that hummed with energy. In his hands, he held a weapon that looked like a short cannon. The smaller raiders moved around him like wolves around a bear. This was their leader, their boss. Ethan watched as the boss fired once. The blast hit a guard's cover and shattered it. The guard flew backward and hit the floor hard. The other guards froze. They were used to fighting raiders in light armor. This was different. This was a breaker unit, a boarding tank. The boss stepped forward again, slow and unstoppable. He spoke in a loud voice, his words translated by the ship's system. "Vraction crew," the boss said, "your captain is down. Your defense is weak. Surrender and live." A guard shouted back, trying to sound brave. "We will never surrender." The boss laughed. It was a deep sound. "Then you will die," he said. Ethan's grip tightened on the weapon he carried. It was not the best gun, but it was enough. He looked around quickly. The hall was open. Cover was limited. The boss's weapon could break most barriers. Ethan needed a different plan. He needed to use the one thing the boss could not control: distance and angles. Ethan moved into the hall, stepping out from the corridor. Several raiders saw him at once. Their heads snapped toward him. Some shouted. A few raised their weapons. Ethan did not stop. He walked forward calmly, like he belonged there. The guards stared at him. One of them shouted, "Human, fall back." Ethan did not. The boss turned slowly to face him. For a second, the hall became quiet. Even the raiders stopped firing. They had heard stories about the human, the one who lifted the captain, the one who fought in the corridor. The boss's helmet tilted slightly. "So," he said, voice amused, "this is the earth creature." Ethan stopped a few steps away. He stood straight, shoulders relaxed, weapon held low. He did not look like a monster. That was the problem. Humans never looked like monsters until they moved. The boss stepped forward, heavy boots shaking the floor. "I like trophies," the boss said. "I will take you alive." Ethan's eyes narrowed. "Try," Ethan replied. The boss laughed again and raised his cannon. Ethan moved at the same moment. He did not run forward. He ran sideways. The cannon fired. The blast hit the floor where Ethan had been standing and exploded into sparks. Ethan slid behind a broken piece of cover. Raiders opened fire. Energy bolts hit the metal, sending hot fragments into the air. Ethan rolled away, using the chaos to change position. He fired back twice. One raider dropped. Another stumbled and fell. The boss fired again. The blast shattered a wall panel and sent smoke into the hall. The guards tried to shoot the boss, but their shots bounced off his thick armor. "Useless," one guard shouted. Ethan understood. The boss's armor was designed to absorb normal fire. Ethan needed to hit weak points. Joints, power pack, helmet seals. He needed close range. But close range against that cannon could mean death. Ethan breathed slowly. He watched the boss's movements. The boss was strong, but heavy. His suit was not made for fast turns. Ethan used that. He moved like a shadow, changing sides, forcing the boss to rotate. The boss fired again and again, trying to predict him. Each blast destroyed more of the hall, but none hit Ethan directly. The guards watched with wide eyes. They had never seen anyone move like this under fire. A human did not fight like an armored beast. A human fought like a hunter. Ethan reached a side panel near the wall. He saw a maintenance lever. It controlled a small section of the hall's emergency doors. Ethan pulled it. A metal barrier slid down halfway behind the boss. It did not trap him fully, but it narrowed his movement. The boss noticed and turned his head sharply. "Clever," he said. Ethan did not answer. He fired at the boss's power pack. The shots did not pierce, but they made the boss shift his stance. Ethan fired again, aiming for the same spot. A small spark appeared. The boss growled. "Enough!" he roared and charged forward. The floor shook as he ran. The cannon raised. Ethan knew he had seconds. He threw his weapon aside and sprinted toward the boss instead of away. The guard shouted in shock. "He's insane!" Ethan slid under the boss's first swing. The cannon blast went over Ethan's head and hit the ceiling, raining sparks. Ethan came up close, right beside the boss's leg. He grabbed the armor joint at the knee and pulled hard. The boss's heavy suit shifted. The boss stumbled one step. Ethan drove his shoulder into the knee joint again. The boss roared and tried to stomp. Ethan rolled away and came up behind him. The boss turned slowly, too slow. Ethan jumped onto the boss's back. His injured side screamed. His shoulder burned. But he held on. He grabbed the power pack cables with both hands and pulled. The cables were thick. Ethan's arms tightened. His muscles strained. He pulled harder. The cables tore loose with a sharp snap. The power pack hummed wildly. The boss screamed in rage. He reached back, trying to grab Ethan. Ethan shifted his weight and avoided the grip. He pulled again. Sparks burst from the pack. The boss's suit lights flickered. The cannon in his hands powered down for half a second. That was Ethan's chance. Ethan slammed his fist into the back of the helmet, right where the seal met the neck ring. The boss staggered. Ethan hit again, and again. The helmet's seal cracked slightly. Air hissed out. The boss's breathing turned rough. The boss reached up and grabbed Ethan's arm. His grip was like a steel clamp. Ethan's bones screamed. The boss threw Ethan off his back. Ethan flew through the air and hit the floor hard. Pain exploded through his ribs. For a moment, the world blurred. The boss stepped toward him, weapon half-working, suit sparking. "Human," the boss growled. "You are strong." Ethan pushed himself up slowly, blood on his lips. He looked at the boss with calm eyes. "Not strong enough," the boss said. Ethan wiped his mouth with the back of his hand. "You're wrong," Ethan said. The boss raised his cannon again. It hummed, trying to recharge. Ethan looked around. He saw the fallen raider weapon near the broken cover. He also saw something else. A ceiling crane hook hanging above the boss, swinging slightly from earlier blasts. Ethan smiled for the first time, small and cold. He sprinted. The boss fired. The blast missed by inches. Ethan jumped and grabbed the crane control line. He yanked it down. The hook dropped fast, driven by emergency power. It slammed into the boss's shoulder and dragged him sideways. The boss roared as the heavy hook pulled him off balance. Ethan ran forward and grabbed the crane line with both hands. He pulled with everything he had. The crane motor screamed. The line tightened. The hook lifted. The boss's feet left the floor. His heavy suit struggled, but it was too late. Ethan pulled again, using the crane like a weapon. The boss rose higher, hanging in the air, legs kicking. Raiders stared in horror. Their leader, their unstoppable tank, was being lifted like cargo. The guard slowly stood up, stunned. Ethan's arms shook. His injuries burned, but he held the line. He looked up at the boss and spoke clearly. "You said you wanted a trophy," Ethan said. "Now you are one." The boss screamed and fired wildly. Shots hit walls. Sparks flew. Ethan pulled one last time and slammed the boss into the wall hard. The helmet cracked further. The suit's power pack exploded in a shower of sparks. The boss went limp. He hung there, silent, defeated. The hall became quiet. The raiders froze. Their courage vanished. They had followed the boss because they believed he was unstoppable. Now they had watched the human lift him off the floor like nothing. The guards raised their weapons again. Raiders began to step back. Some dropped their guns. Some ran toward the docking door. Ethan released the crane line and stumbled. His legs shook. He almost fell. Ethan ran before anyone could stop him. The moment he saw the red marker blinking near the sealed vault, his body moved on instinct. The guards behind him shouted, but their voices faded under the alarms. The corridor ahead was long, lit by red emergency strips. Smoke still drifted from damaged panels. The ship's metal walls carried distant sounds of fighting, but docking ring 3 had gone quiet. The raiders were no longer pushing there. They were moving somewhere else. Ethan's mind worked fast. Raiders did not risk boarding a warship for fun. They wanted something valuable. And the only thing valuable enough to justify this attack was something hidden, something protected. Captain Rocha's seal vault. Ethan opened his comm line again. "Captain," he said, "tell me what is in that vault." Static crackled. The captain's voice came through, weaker but still commanding. "Keep moving," Captain Rocha said. "Do not let them reach it." Ethan's jaw tightened. "That's not an answer," Ethan said. The captain paused. Then he spoke, slow and careful. "It is a data core," he said, "and it is not meant for raider hands." Ethan kept running. "What kind of data?" Ethan asked. The captain's voice lowered. "Human data," the captain replied. Ethan's steps slowed for half a second. Then he ran faster. Human data. That meant the raiders did not fear the ship. They feared him. They feared humans. Ethan's mind flashed back to the sabotage officer's words. "Humans are a threat. They will replace us." That was not a random fear. It sounded like someone had fed them that idea. Someone wanted humans to look like monsters. Ethan reached a junction and turned sharply. He followed the map toward the vault section. The corridor became cleaner here, less damaged. This part of the ship was protected. The doors were thicker. Security cameras blinked in the ceiling. Ethan's boots hit the floor hard as he pushed forward. Two guards tried to keep up, but they were slower in heavy armor. Ethan reached the vault corridor first. It was a narrow hallway with a single large door at the end. The door was made of reinforced alloy with a security seal in the center. The seal glowed faintly, showing it was active. In front of the door stood 3 raiders. Not the light ones. These were medium armor units. Fast, trained, and smart. They were not shooting. They were working. One held a cutting tool against the seal. Another watched the corridor. The third carried a small case, likely for the core. Ethan stopped at the far end of the hall. The raiders turned. Their weapons rose. Ethan's hands were empty again. He had dropped his gun during the fight with the boss. But he did not panic. He stood still, shoulders relaxed, eyes calm. The raiders hesitated. They had heard about him. They had watched their boss fall. They did not want to fight him in a narrow corridor. One raider spoke through his helmet, his voice translated. "Human," he said, "stay back. This is not your ship." Ethan took one slow step forward. "It is my crew," Ethan replied. The raider laughed once. "You are not crew," he said. "You are cargo." Ethan's eyes hardened. "Wrong," Ethan said. "I'm the reason you're leaving." The raiders opened fire. Ethan moved instantly. He dove to the side, using the corridor wall as cover. Energy bolts hit the metal and exploded into sparks. Ethan rolled forward, closing distance. In tight spaces, guns are less useful. Ethan wanted their weapons close. He reached the first raider and grabbed the barrel of the gun, pushing it upward. The shot fired into the ceiling. Ethan slammed his elbow into the raider's helmet. The raider fell. Ethan took the weapon and fired twice. The second raider dropped. The third raider backed away, shocked, and fired again. Ethan stepped into the shot, letting it burn his sleeve instead of his chest. He grabbed the raider's wrist and twisted hard. The raider screamed. Ethan ripped the weapon away and shoved the raider into the wall. The raider slid down and went still. The corridor fell quiet. Only the vault door remained, humming softly. Ethan walked toward it. The cutting tool had damaged the outer seal. The security light blinked yellow now, not green. The door was still locked, but it had been weakened. Ethan pressed his comm line. "Captain," he said, "they almost got in." Captain Rocha's voice came back, tense. "Did they reach the seal?" Ethan looked at the damage. "Yes," he replied. The captain's breathing was audible through the comm. "Then we have no time," Captain Rocha said. "They will send more." Ethan looked down at the fallen raiders. He knew the captain was right. Raiders did not send only one team. If this was planned, more were coming. Ethan stared at the vault door. "Open it," Ethan said. "Let me secure the core." The comm line went silent for a moment. Then the captain spoke, voice hard. "No," Captain Rocha said. Ethan's eyes narrowed. "Why?" Ethan asked. Captain Rocha hesitated. "Because that core is not only data," the captain said. "It is proof." Ethan's heart beat harder. "Proof of what?" Ethan asked. Captain Rocha's voice became very quiet. "Proof that humans were banned," the captain said. Ethan froze. The words hit him harder than any weapon. "Banned," Ethan repeated. Captain Rocha continued. Long ago, he said, the Council feared Earth. Not because humans were evil, because humans adapt too fast. You grow stronger under pressure. You learn too quickly. Ethan's jaw tightened. The captain's words were calm, but they carried shame. The Council decided humans were too dangerous, Captain Roke said. They classified you as a controlled species. They hid your real records. They spread lies. Ethan's hands curled into fists. So they called us weak, Ethan said. They laughed at us. Captain Roke's voice turned bitter. Yes, the captain replied. They mocked you in public, so no one would fear you. And they feared you, so no one would ally with you. Ethan's mind raced. It made sense now. The sabotage officer's fear. The raiders targeting human data. The boss wanting him alive. They did not just want treasure. They wanted a human. They wanted proof. They wanted leverage. Ethan looked at the vault door again. What's inside exactly? Ethan asked. Captain Roke answered slowly. Records of human combat performance, he said. Old footage, old reports, and a list of council members who voted for the ban. Ethan exhaled. So if the raiders take it, Ethan said, they can sell it. Captain Roke's voice turned sharp. Worse, the captain said. They can use it to start a war. They can claim humans are weapons. They can push the galaxy into fear. Ethan stared at the door. His blood felt hot. He was not angry at the raiders anymore. He was angry at the system, at the lies, at the quiet fear that had controlled everything. Ethan spoke into the comm line, voice steady. Captain, he said, I need access. The captain was silent. Ethan continued. I'm already in this, he said. They boarded because of me. They sabotaged because of me. They attacked because of what humans are. Captain Roke's voice finally returned. You're right, he said. But if you see what is inside, you will understand why the council feared you. Ethan's eyes stayed calm. I already understand, he replied. Captain Roke paused. Then he gave the command. Vault access granted, he said. The vault door beeped. The security seal changed from yellow to blue. Heavy locks clicked inside. The door opened slowly with a deep metallic sound. Cold air flowed out. Ethan stepped inside. The vault was small, but dense with protected cases. In the center sat a single black container with council markings. Ethan approached it. His hands hovered over it for a moment. He expected to feel pride or excitement, but what he felt was something darker, like touching a truth that had been buried for too long. Ethan opened the container. Inside was a data core, small and simple, but protected like a weapon. Next to it was a thin file chip. Ethan took both. Then he heard footsteps. Not one set. Many. Raiders were coming. Ethan stepped back out of the vault and looked down the corridor. At the far end, shadows moved. Helmet lights flickered. A full raider team was approaching. And this time, they were not here to cut a door. They were here to take the human. A loud voice echoed down the hall, translated by the ship. Human Ethan Cole, the voice said, you are the prize. Come with us, and your crew lives. Ethan's grip tightened on the data core. He looked at the raiders. He looked at the corridor behind him. He looked at the vault. He made a decision. He raised his comm line. Captain, Ethan said they want me. Captain Roke's voice came back instantly. Do not surrender, the captain ordered. Ethan's eyes stayed sharp. I won't, Ethan said. Then he spoke one more sentence, calm and dangerous. But I will use their greed. He turned and began moving, not away from the raiders, but deeper into the ship. He was leading them, because if they wanted the human, they would follow. And Ethan was about to show them what a human could do when he stopped being tested and started hunting. Ethan moved quickly through the ship's narrow service corridors, the hum of the engines under his feet and the alarms still ringing in his ears. Behind him, the raiders followed without hesitation, driven by greed and the orders of their fallen boss. He could hear the boots pounding against the metal floor, the clatter of weapons, the occasional hiss of an energy shot missed or hitting the walls. Ethan held the data core tightly against his chest. It was small, but its weight was more than physical. It carried truth, proof, and danger. He had already seen what the raiders were capable of. He knew they would not stop until they had it in their hands. The corridors twisted and turned like the inside of a giant mechanical beast. Ethan knew them well. The Vraction was his home now, and every corner was familiar. He used that familiarity to his advantage, taking sharp turns, ducking behind maintenance panels, and slipping through emergency exits that few raiders would think to check. Behind him, a raider shouted, "He's trying to escape. Don't let him reach the lower decks." Ethan glanced back quickly. The raiders were armored, fast, and ruthless, but predictable. Their numbers worked against them in tight corridors. He let them close the distance, then ducked behind a corner and fired a shot from the stolen weapon. The energy bolt struck the wall, sending sparks flying, and one raider collided with the metal surface. Ethan rolled out, moving further down the corridor, using speed and surprise rather than brute force. As he ran, his side burned where he had been cut, and his shoulder ached from carrying the captain earlier, but he ignored the pain. Humans, he thought, adapt under pressure. That was what set them apart. He reached a junction that split into two paths. One led to the engineering deck, the other to the lower storage levels. Ethan made his choice instantly. Storage. Raiders would expect him to try to escape to safety or reinforce the bridge. Storage was unpredictable. He entered the wide room filled with crates, machinery, and low metal walkways. The lighting was dim, flickering in places where damage had caused power surges. Ethan dropped the data core into a protective case in the middle of the room. He needed it safe, but he also needed a trap. The raiders would follow, and he would use the room to even the odds. He heard them entering the storage bay now. Their heavy boots echoed through the metal corridors, and the doors hissed open. He did not wait. Ethan stepped out from behind a large crate and shouted, "Looking for me?" The raiders froze for a moment. One of them barked an order. "Surround him. Take the human." Ethan smiled faintly. They moved in, dividing themselves along the crates. He watched carefully. One raider advanced too quickly, stepping onto a raised platform. Ethan grabbed a loose chain hanging from the ceiling and swung down. He landed on the raider's back with his full weight. The raider grunted as Ethan twisted and slammed him into the crate below. Sparks flew where metal struck metal. The other raiders fired their weapons, but Ethan was already moving again, ducking behind a stack of crates and taking cover. He picked up a short pipe lying on the floor. It was not a weapon, but in his hands it became one. As another raider approached, he swung it with precision. The impact caught the raider on the side of the helmet. He collapsed, stunned, giving Ethan a chance to move closer to the central crate holding the core. Another raider jumped from above, swinging a heavy baton. Ethan rolled to the side and grabbed the raider mid-strike, twisting his wrist until the weapon dropped. He used his shoulder to push the raider into a stack of crates. The raider groaned, unable to stand quickly. Ethan's muscles burned with effort, but he ignored it. Focus was his weapon. Behind him, the remaining raiders began to coordinate. They were smart enough to know that splitting would give Ethan an advantage, but they underestimated human speed and improvisation. Ethan pressed forward, moving along the shadows. He used crates as walls, walkways as cover, and anything metal that could make noise to distract them. One raider advanced directly at him, trying to strike with a short blade. Ethan ducked, grabbed the raider's arm, and flipped him over his shoulder. The raider slammed into a crate, stunned. Ethan did not pause. He reached the central crate, opened it, and checked the data core. It was secure, but there was no time to celebrate. Another group of raiders had found the other entrance. They were coming from behind, faster this time. Ethan turned and readied himself. The corridor leading to this bay was narrow, perfect for a bottleneck. He had only seconds to plan. The first raider entered the bay, swinging a short staff. Ethan sidestepped, grabbed the staff, and used the momentum to spin the raider into the wall. Another raider followed. Ethan ducked under a low-hanging beam and kicked the raider off balance, sending him crashing into the floor. The others hesitated. They had never seen a human fight like this. Not a machine, not an animal, a human. Ethan could feel their hesitation. He pressed it. He ran along the side of the bay, kicking over crates to create obstacles. Sparks flew from damaged panels as raiders tried to keep up. The sound of boots and shouting echoed, but Ethan stayed calm. One raider tried to flank him from the side. Ethan grabbed a loose cable hanging from the ceiling, swung it like a whip, and knocked the raider off his feet. The energy bolts fired by the remaining raiders hit the walls near him. He rolled into cover behind a large crate. His breathing was steady, controlled. He felt pain in his shoulder, in his side, but he did not slow. He needed them to come closer. He needed to use the bay itself as his weapon. The raiders advanced again, stepping over the fallen. Ethan picked up a small crate, not heavy but solid. He swung at the nearest raider, knocking him into a stack of metal containers. The containers fell, creating a loud crash and blocking part of the corridor. The remaining raiders hesitated again. Ethan used the moment to step back, keeping the data core protected. One raider shouted, frustrated, "This is impossible." Ethan smiled faintly. "Not impossible," he muttered. "Just human." He ducked behind another crate as a group of raiders tried to push forward. Using the shadows, he grabbed another cable, swung across the open floor, and kicked the nearest raider, sending him sprawling. The others froze, unsure how to respond. Ethan's mind raced. He calculated the angles, the speed, the cover. Every movement was deliberate. Every strike was precise. The raiders were powerful, but the bay worked against them, and the human in front of them was not normal. With a shout, Ethan pushed a small crate toward a low walkway above. The weight shifted the crates, causing a chain reaction. Sparks flew. A metal crate slid across the floor, tripping one of the raiders. Another stumbled over the fallen. Chaos erupted. Ethan ran to the side, using the confusion to move toward the vault again. He looked at the raiders' positions. They had underestimated him at every turn. He smiled, knowing he had one chance left. If they came for the core directly, they would have to pass through him. And he was ready. The bay was his battlefield. Every crate, cable, and metal panel was part of his plan. Ethan readied himself, the data core secure, and whispered under his breath, "Come get me." The raiders regrouped, but they were slower, cautious now. They knew this human was dangerous. And Ethan, the human, was ready to show them exactly why. Ethan stood in the center of the storage bay, the data core secure in his hands. Sparks still flew from damaged panels, and smoke curled through the air. The raiders had regrouped at the far end of the hall, their armored suits glinting under the flickering lights. Their leader was not among them. His boss had been taken down by Ethan's crane attack, but the remaining raiders were skilled, dangerous, and desperate. They had followed him this far, and they would not leave empty-handed. Ethan's muscles ached from the constant movement, from the fights, from carrying Captain Roke, and from rolling, dodging, and striking under ship gravity. But he did not slow. Humans adapted. He adjusted his grip on the data core, checking that the protective casing held. One wrong move now, and everything could be lost. The raiders spoke in harsh, alien tones. The translation system on the ship provided a garbled version, but the meaning was clear. "Give it," one raider demanded, stepping forward. "Hand over the human. Hand over the core." Ethan's eyes narrowed. "Not happening," he said. His voice carried through the bay, calm but dangerous. Another raider fired a quick burst of energy bolts. Ethan rolled behind a crate, letting the shots hit metal and explode into sparks. He darted out from cover, swinging a heavy pipe he had picked up earlier. The first raider was knocked off his feet, crashing into the wall with a loud thud. The others hesitated, calculating. Ethan's mind raced. He needed to control the fight, to use the bay itself as a weapon. He noticed the upper catwalks. A few maintenance cables hung loose from the ceiling. Sparks from the damaged panels illuminated the bay, showing him angles and weak points. He grabbed one cable, swung across the floor, and kicked a raider squarely in the chest. The raider went flying backward, hitting a stack of crates. Another raider rushed him. Ethan stepped aside, grabbed a nearby toolbox, and swung it like a club. Metal struck armor. The raider stumbled, groaning, and fell. Ethan's body burned, his lungs filled with pain, but he did not stop. The remaining raiders were fewer now, but they were smart. One flanked him, moving through a gap between crates. Ethan saw him in his peripheral vision. He ducked, rolled, and came up behind the raider. With a quick move, he grabbed the raider's weapon, twisted the wrist, and pushed him into a wall. Sparks flew from the energy pack as it hit the metal. The The raiders slumped, stunned. Two left. They exchanged a glance, hesitation crossing their helmets. One raised a blade. Ethan smiled faintly. He did not need weapons. He had the environment. He had speed. And he had human instinct. He charged the first of the two, sliding under the swinging blade, grabbing the raider by the shoulders, and slamming him into a nearby metal crate. The impact sent sparks flying. The raider groaned, trying to rise, but Ethan's weight pressed down. The final raider, seeing his companion trapped, raised a weapon and fired. The energy bolts struck the crate where Ethan stood, sending sparks and smoke into the air. Ethan rolled sideways, letting the bolts miss him entirely. Then he ran. The remaining raider tried to chase, but Ethan was already moving toward the center of the bay, closer to the core. Ethan's heart raced, but his mind stayed clear. The raider's focus on the core was its weakness. Ethan feinted to the left, then ducked behind a tall stack of crates. The raider followed, and Ethan pushed a smaller crate, tipping it over. It struck the raider's legs. He stumbled, off balance. Ethan jumped, landing on the raider's back, grabbing his shoulders and using his weight to throw him into the floor. The impact shook the metal. The raider groaned, unable to rise immediately. Ethan stepped back, chest heaving. The bay was quiet now, except for the distant alarms and the hiss of damaged panels. He held the data core close. Only a few sparks of light moved across the floor. The remaining raider, the last one standing, hesitated. Fear was in his posture. He had watched his comrades fall, seen their boss taken down, and realized he was no longer in control. Ethan advanced slowly, every step measured. "Leave," he said. "Now." The raider did not respond. Instead, he lunged. Ethan sidestepped, grabbed the raider's arm, and used leverage to slam him into the wall. The armor groaned. The raider's helmet cracked slightly. Ethan pressed forward, using the momentum to push the raider onto the floor. Then he kicked the weapon out of reach and stepped back. The last raider lay still, groaning, defeated. Ethan exhaled slowly. His body shook from exhaustion, from adrenaline, from the pain of wounds that burned in his side and shoulder. But the core was safe. He looked around the bay, checking for movement. There was none. The raiders were gone. Or at least, they would not move while he remained. Ethan allowed himself a moment to breathe. His eyes scanned the room. Sparks still fell from damaged panels. Smoke drifted lazily. The alarm still echoed. But for now, victory was his. He activated his comm line. "Captain," he said, voice strained but clear. "The core is secure. All threats neutralized." Captain Roca's voice came back immediately, stronger now as the medic stabilized his suit. "Good work, human," the captain said. "I knew you could handle it." Ethan allowed himself a faint smile. "It wasn't just me," he said. The crew held the line. "But the raiders, they learned something today." The captain's voice softened. "Yes," he said. "They learned what humans are capable of. Not just strength, not just resilience, but instinct, strategy, adaptation. You are extraordinary." Ethan shook his head. "Just a human," he replied. "Just someone who refuses to stop when it matters." The captain's voice was quiet for a moment. "Today," he said, "you saved more than a data core. You saved this ship. You saved every life aboard. And more than that, you proved something the Council never wanted anyone to know." Ethan looked down at the core again, feeling its weight. "That humans are not weak," he said softly. "That we adapt. That we fight. That we survive." Captain Roque chuckled faintly. "And you did it with half the crew thinking you couldn't, and every enemy underestimating you." Ethan felt his chest tighten. "I fight for my crew," he said. "For everyone who counts on me. That's enough." Outside, the docking bay alarms began to quiet. The raiders' retreating ships left the Vraction, limping back into dark space. The corridor beyond the storage bay was empty. Ethan leaned against a crate, finally letting himself relax slightly. Sweat ran down his face. Blood stained his uniform. But the core remained safe. The proof of human strength, resilience, and potential was now secure. The captain's voice came again. "Human," he said, "come to the bridge. The crew needs to see that victory is not just survival. It is inspiration. They need to see what you've done." Ethan nodded. He took one last look at the storage bay, at the fallen raiders, and at the path he had fought through. Every step, every strike, every strategy had led here. He had turned fear into action, weakness into strength, chaos into control. And now, with the core secure, he would lead the Vraxian's crew forward, stronger than before, into the unknown. As he ran toward the bridge, the words echoed in his mind, and in the minds of anyone who had doubted humans. They laughed at Earth's muscles, until a human lifted their captain and fought like a storm. The doors to the bridge opened. Lights flared. Crew members turned. Their faces were tired, scared, but alive. Captain Roke stood tall, stabilized in his armor. And behind him, Ethan stepped in, holding the data core high. Silence fell, followed by awe. And in that moment, every officer, every crew member, every human and alien who had witnessed the battle knew the truth. Strength was not measured by size, armor, or authority. Strength was measured by courage, resolve, and heart. Ethan lowered the core and looked at Captain Roke. The captain's eyes met his, and for the first time, there was no doubt. Respect, not fear. Respect. Today, Captain Roke said, voice loud enough for everyone to hear, we learned what humans are capable of. Never forget it. Ethan nodded. The crew erupted into quiet cheers. Sparks of hope spread through the bridge, stronger than any alarm, louder than any blast. And as the Vraxian continued its journey through the stars, one truth burned brighter than the ship's engines. Humans, underestimated for too long, had proven their place among the stars. The battle was over. The ship survived, and the legend of Ethan, the human who lifted a captain, fought through impossible odds, and protected the core, had only just begun.